Think about this. You wake up in the morning, you go to court. There is a defendant in front of you. There's a lawyer, a prosecutor, a judge, a full legal process. But the defendant is a pig in chains dressed in human clothes. And this is not a joke. This really happened. Medieval Europe is one of the most misunderstood periods in history. Most people see it as just a dark, dirty, and backward age. But in reality, the Middle Ages had a highly consistent logic within itself. And that logic sometimes produced decisions that, when you read them today, either make you laugh or leave you wondering, how is this even possible? This is exactly where animal trials come in. So how did this start? In records dating back to 824 AD, we see the first attempts at religious sanctions against rats that damaged the grain storage of a village church. But systematic animal trials really began in the 13th century, in the 1200s, and continued until the 17th century. So this wasn't just a few people's bizarre idea. It was an officially documented legal practice across Europe that lasted for about 400 years. France, Italy, Germany, Switzerland, Spain, there are records in all of them. Historian E.P. Evans documented more than 200 such cases in his 1906 book, The Criminal Prosecution and Capital Punishment of Animals. Pigs, horses, oxen, mice, rats, swarms of flies, caterpillars, even once a rooster were brought to court. Now, let's come to the most famous case. The year is 1386. A small town in Normandy, France, Falaise. A pig leaves a barn and bites a baby's face and arm. The baby dies. And do you know what the town authorities do? They arrest the pig, literally arrest it. Shackles are put on its legs, it is taken to the town dungeon. Then an official trial is opened. The prosecutor reads the charges. The pig is accused of acting intentionally and maliciously. A judge is assigned. Witnesses are heard. The pig is convicted. And the sentence? Execution. But the story doesn't end there. Before killing the pig, the executioner dresses it in human clothes, jacket, pants, hat. Because the crime committed was a human crime. Therefore, the punishment had to be carried out in a human manner. Engravings from that period depicting this scene still exist. And let me tell you, when you look at them, you feel something very strange. What about defense lawyers? This is the most absurd yet fascinating part of the whole story. Animals had lawyers, real, paid, legally trained lawyers. Especially in cases against agricultural pests, rats, caterpillars, locusts, church courts conducted formal defense processes. The lawyer would stand before the court and say, "Your Honor, these rats, my clients, are simply creatures created by God. Like humans, they must seek food. Moreover, not enough food has been left in the fields, and this does not make them guilty." Sometimes these arguments actually worked. In 1522, in the town of Autun in Italy, a famous jurist, Bartholomew Chassenet, defended rats in a case against them. Chassenet argued that the rats had to be properly summoned, and that the summons should be delivered not just to one village, but to all rats in the region. The court accepted this. Then, when the rats did not appear in court, Chassenet claimed, "My clients could not attend due to fear of cat attacks on the way. This is a force majeure." And the court took this argument seriously as well. This case propelled Chassenet's career to the top. In other words, a lawyer became famous by defending rats. So why? Why were people doing this? To understand this, you have to step into the medieval mindset. At that time, the world was explained through a hierarchy called the Great Chain of Being. At the top was God. Below were angels, then humans, then animals, plants, and inanimate objects. Everything had a place and a responsibility within this chain. According to church law, all creatures were part of a divine order, and anything that disrupted this order, whether human or animal, could be brought before divine justice. Of course, animals couldn't consciously commit crimes, but causing harm was enough. Also, putting animals on trial sent a strong message to society. Nothing that disrupts order goes unpunished. Pig trials, however, were a bit different. Pigs at the time roamed freely within human settlements, in the streets, and sometimes they did actually attack people, especially babies. In these cases, the goal was both to deliver justice and to hold the owners accountable, because the owner of the pig was often put on trial as well. And here's the most interesting part. These trials don't actually show the backwardness of the Middle Ages. On the contrary, they point to the existence of a highly developed legal system. The right to a lawyer, the requirement of summons, the defense of force majeure, these are legal concepts we still use today. The only difference is that the defendant was a rat or a pig. Today, historians look at these trials differently. Some interpret them as a kind of social valve. When peasants lost their crops and faced hunger, having these trials gave them a sense of control. They could appeal to justice. They could trust the system. And psychologically, that was extremely important. Finally, let me say this. In 1740, in Switzerland, a cow was tried in a case that ended in execution. This is one of the last documented animal execution trials, so this practice continued for nearly 500 years. Was the Middle Ages strange? Yes. But was it internally consistent?
Absolutely. And sometimes the strangest pages of history are the ones that tell us the most about humanity. Cut the history short, because history is long, but the best parts are always short.